Morning all. It's day 22 I believe. I'm out of GoPro batteries, so this is all on iPhone at the moment. It rained all night, was windy all night and cold all night. It's still windy now. Obviously the rain where I was turned out to be snow, a bit higher up here. So it's just a light dusting of snow, but it's cold. It's still 0 degrees right now and it's nearly 8:30. Today I just want to get across the plateau all the way across to the other side and be done, and I almost think that I might even try my best to get to Thompson's campsite, which is down the mountain almost. We'll see how we go. I'm making the right time this morning, so we'll see. But I will stop and do a solar charge at some point, so that might change things, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, just a quick video considering there's not much else I can do. I am taking photos if I can take photos, but I am even shutting the iPhone down in between everything, so let's see how we go. Alright, take it easy. G'day everybody, how are we all? It's now roughly 2 weeks since I finished the AAWT, and I thought I would do something a little bit different for the last video, because really the last video would have been very short because I didn't have any battery of any form for my GoPro or my phone. I was actually turning my phone off, and I had it off for the second last and last day, and I would only turn it on just to take a quick photo of something that was of interest, and then I would shut it back down again, and it was on like 10% for 2 days. So I really didn't have too much footage, just more photos than anything else. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different, and I'll show you some of my gear that I had on the trail, and you know, did I think it was any good? Did it work? Didn't it work? You know, so on. So I'll do that and add it to the end of the last video. It's just to sort of give you a little bit of information as to what I was using out there, and you know, did it do its job? But the trail overall, let's see. In the end, for me, it was about 740 kilometers, which makes sense because the single trail's never quite calculated properly. That's usually a point A to point B. They don't take into account all the meandering you do, which obviously does get recorded when you're GPSing it. So I've got a bit more of a real world value of 740 than the than the 680, 700 they were talking about in the book. So of course we use the Chapman's Guide. Everybody knows the Chapman's Guide, so that's what we all base our measurements on and our daily numbers on. But I mean, I learnt, especially at the Victorian end, that you could have a calculated 25k day, but in the end that worked out to be something like a 30k day. So your days were longer, and that's pretty much especially south, Victoria for sure, that's exactly how it was. North not so much, because there was a lot more fire trail involved in the Kosciuszko end, so the numbers were a bit closer. So your planning and your days planning was much more accurate at the north end. But overall, look, it was way tougher than the human haul I did the year before, but a lot less road walking, no logging trail walking, which is fantastic to me because that is my pet hate of any form of walking, is to walk logging trails. I absolutely detest those things. So to have none of that there, that was a positive for me straight away. So and to be fair, the amount of road walking wasn't very much at all. I mean, you finish in a town, but it's a little mining town, so you literally are single trail into the town. So there's no meandering through the suburbs like what we did with the human hovel. The Great North Walk is a similar one where you spend the whole day in town, so there's actually not really hiking at that point. But we didn't have that here. You left from a national park visitor centre and you finished in a very small historic town in a valley. So you really didn't have any of that modern day town sealed road stuff. None of that existed really. The Omeo Highway was the only one, and really you only walked on that for a couple of k's maybe, and you're off it. So that was it really. Hotham, you had the choice. You could do a pile of single trail or you could use the road. So that was up to you at that point in time. So you wanted to use the road, you could for sure. I used the road at that point in time, like I say in my video, which you'll see, which you will have watched already, I'd assume, if you've got this far. I used the road because I wanted to expedite my time frame to get to my drop, knowing that I had to go further after my drop to get a site to camp that night. So I did that. I would have preferred to do the single trail, but you had to take into account time, especially if you're doing the distances I was doing. Look, I met two guys, in fact, at Mount Hotham. I'd caught up to them at Mount Hotham. They were at day 40 at Mount Hotham, and I was on my 14th day, I believe. Anyway, 13, 14, somewhere there. Anyway, it'll be the Mount Hotham day, whichever number that was. So that was the day, and they were out there for 60. So and I did it in 23. So if you're out there for their time frame, then for sure you're only doing 10-15k days, right? So then it's fine, it's doable, and you don't have to do what I do, where you had to expedite in a certain couple of places just to not prolong your night travel, which I knew there was, because I had a time frame set and I'd already indicated this was the time that I was going to finish, not knowing that it was going to be as hard as it was. I really was at my limit every single day, bar the third day where I was forced into the hut with the storms there at Kosciuszko. That was the only day where I finished, I think, 2:30, 3 o'clock. I'd only done 21, 22 Ks, I believe. So that was the only day really where I didn't maximize every single day. Otherwise, I maximized every single day. I started super early, usually before the sun got up, and quite often I finished after the sun went down. So if you're doing over a longer period, you don't have to. You can get up. I mean, I know those boys sometimes didn't leave their morning spaces until 11 o'clock. The day I caught them, they had only just left at 9:30. So, and they definitely didn't come as far along as I did. So they would have been between Hotham and the south side of the Twins is where they would have stayed. So they were probably at camp a good couple of hours before the sun went down. So if you work on that theory, then you can do all the slowest parts as much as you like because you're taking your time. So I wasn't taking my time. I pushed the whole way. But I mean, I've said this before, and I said it on the Human Hole. That's just my way of hiking. If I'm doing a day trip, that's fine. I can meander and stop and smell the flowers and all those sorts of things. It's just a day trip. But if I'm doing something like this, that's long, a week long, a couple of weeks long, I am there to hike, and I hike hard, and that's just how I do it. So it's not for everybody, obviously. Sometimes I don't think it's for me, especially on this trail where I had some quite difficult injuries that I then had to look after while I was there on the trail. But that's all part and parcel of how I operate when I walk on the trail. So, but that's it. But look, otherwise, I actually think the trail was quite good. For 23 days, so let's say 22 days, because my last day literally was only an hour and a half of walking for 5Ks. I'd stopped at Thomas Bridge campsite, and I slept on the picnic table that night. Purely because I didn't want to play with a wet tent, so I slept on the picnic table. I was only 5 kilometres away from Walhalla. So, and I could have easily have done that the night before, but there was no reason to, because as you'll see in my videos, I had to finish the day after anyway, so there was no point pushing. And then what do you do when you get to Walhalla? The hotel's not open, there's nothing there, you can't do anything. So I just stayed 5Ks from the end and meandered in the morning, because I was able to get a lift quite early in the morning. So that was fine. So for 22 days, really, what can I say? For 22 days, I believe maybe there were 3 days, maybe 4. I'll say 3. I'll give one of the days the benefit of the doubt. There were 3 days that were just moving days where there was nothing. It was just fire trail. You were just getting from your camps. You were just getting from one focus that you had done to get to the next one. So, for argument's sake, I'd done the Mount Hotham and got to the south side of the Twins. That was all nice walking from Copes all the way across the top, the plains, seeing, Falls Creek, all those sorts of things, right? And it was all single trail. It was nice. You get the Copes, you go, then across we go, and we get to Hotham, and that's all nice single trail, really fun. You get to there, get to the Twins, sleep on the south side of the Twins, and then there's nothing from there that's worth looking at. All the mountaintops are treed in. It's just fire trail, and it's just straight up and down roller coaster fire trail, but it's to get you down towards Barry's Saddle and the Viking, right? So that's just a moving day. So that's fine. You have to have moving days. You can't have everything in the one place. So you deal with those sorts of things. And you just write those days off, which I did. You just do them, just get them done, so you can get to the next fun part, effectively, right? Which was, things like, the day across Main Range to Kosciuszko. Probably the funnest day I had on trail, purely because of the festival atmosphere everybody had there. The trail wasn't the best trail. It was very manicured for masses of people to walk on it, so there was nothing entertaining about it, but it was festive with all the people that were there. And going to the top of Kosciuszko, I haven't been there before. It's taken me 50 years to get to the top, but it was very festive up there, and everybody was you know, happy as hell to be up the top. So and it was like that for the whole day. Everybody was very festive and excited to, you know, to be up as high as they possibly can be. So it was quite a fun, festive day. Lots of fun talking as you went along. All right, so there were days like that were fantastic. So there was plenty to see. There was plenty of variation in the trail that you wouldn't have got bored in the trail. The trail was vast enough that they gave you everything. So overall, I really did enjoy the trail. I mean, there were parts that I absolutely detested, and you know, probably day 10 is the pinnacle. It will tell you. You'll have seen the end of day 10 when I'm in my tent, and I'm a little bit dirty about day 10. But look, 700 plus kilometers of trail is very hard for all the maintenance people to maintain, and the bits they did maintain are really good. Right now they're really good. I'd come into a few places where I'd already marked it as overgrown because that was the latest information I had, and when I got in there they'd done the maintenance, and it was just a delight to walk through the maintenance they did. So they work hard and they do it. It's a lot of trail to maintain, so I do understand that there are places where the trail is just diabolical. But you know, look, we can't have concrete footpaths. It just wouldn't be fun, would it? So it was overall just really fun. And looking back, as I've been doing the editing to get up to this point, generally my videos, my little talks or whatnot, I'm smiling and laughing more than I did on the human hole. So that must say that I did enjoy it at the time. Even though I call it type 2 fun, I must have enjoyed it at the time. So that's a big tick. It's super hard, everybody. It really is super hard. Lots of vertical. In the end, it was about 30,000 meters of gain that you do, so that's a lot of climbing. And to be fair, all the gain you do, you pretty much do that in, you know, descending, giving it all back. And descending is really hard, especially in Victoria when you're going down the south side of the mountains. They are slippery and Teflon, a lot of them, really tough, and prolonged descents to the point that your legs, you know, they're not getting a rest. They really do cop a battering coming down the south side on some of those mountains. So she was a tough walk, but it was good fun, and the scenery is spectacular. And I recommend. I mean, look, I can't say I have not gone north, but from my experience going south, if I had come north, which was my original plan until 3 days before I started, I would have found it very tough, because no way, it didn't matter how much training I had done at home, walking at home is not the same as being on a trail. I would not have had my legs, and I would have struggled so much on all those crazy long climbs. So coming from north, you're doing climbing all the way to Kosciuszko effectively on, for me, the 7th day, but you basically had climbed in elevation all the way to there. But all the mountains in between, all the climbing you did in between, were like 100 meters, 200 meters. So by the time I got into Victoria on the 8th day, so the day after Kosciuszko, I got into Victoria on the 8th day, my legs were getting better. My legs are a bit stronger, understood what they were doing. And by the time I got to Mount Wheels, my legs were there. I was still a bit unsure about the climbs, but when I got to each climb, I was able to deal with the climbs actually really well with my legs. So I don't believe I could have done that going the other way. I mean, look, I could have just rolled into the ACT if I'd gone the other way, because I would have had crazy good legs by the time I got to Kosciuszko for sure, and probably ate it all up. But it would have been so difficult down in the Victorian end. So that would have been really tough, way more tough than what I found it in the end. So, but having your legs, trail legs, and look, going south, I must say, look, going south, you end up rolling into some of the prettiest track. It's at the south end. For me, all the track for me, the most prettiest part was Bawbaw Plateau. That's I haven't come across anything like that. I mean, I live in Sydney, up against the mountains, and the mountains is my hiking playground, and there's nothing like it there at all. Nothing remotely is the same or as pretty as the Bawbaw Plateau. I mean, it was turned on at the time, like it really showed itself in its best possible way. It had snowed the night before, and everything was wet. All the snow gum trees were, you know, the trunks and everything were wet, so they were showing their rainbow colours with the backdrop of the deep green of the underground foliage, and then the snow falling, you know, and some of the snow on the ground. It was like, I mean, it was a picture perfect. You couldn't have got a better. So maybe I was just lucky that I came across it at that point in time. It doesn't look like that normally, but I don't think so. It was just such a pretty place for the whole way that I'd gone. It was the prettiest place for sure. So, and there was some really nice pretty places in Victoria. There were some pretty places in Kosciuszko, but Kosciuszko's been ravished so poorly by whatever bug is killing the snow gums up there that, I mean, you have to think 90% of the snow gums in Kosciuszko are now gone. It was just mountains of dead trees. So it's really apocalyptic there and barren in Kosciuszko, so you're getting a totally different feel when you're up there to the lushness of what you're getting in Victoria. So, but it was good, you know. I mean, you had that such an array of different views and ecosystems that you went through. So, you know, you do get that there. It's very vast. So, you know, it was really good. So I won't see that again unless I go down and I actually particularly take out a focus to go to certain points again. I mean, look, Bawbaw Plateau. Look, I will most definitely go down there and maybe do some sections, some of the spur off the main track. There were some spurs there, so I might go down and do sections just to do that, just because, you know, it was pretty where I was. It must be pretty in that whole area, so it'll be worth my effort to go down and do some sections there. And that's what I would do. I would never do the trail again, because like I say, there's too much A to B travel that just writes off days for no reason. But there's enough sections there that you could go and spend a day or two, 3-night trip maybe, who knows, just to meander and then do a lot of the side stuff, which I didn't do a lot. I didn't do any side stuff. I just bombed from A to B all the way straight to the end, and I didn't do anything off the side. So I'd like to go down. I'd go back down, pick parts out that I liked, go and do sections there, and then go and do some of the offshoots, you know, some of the alternative pieces that you could do that I didn't get around to doing. So I would like to do that. So, which says a lot. Says that there's enough to offer on that trail that, you know, I'm happy to go back. Even now, 2 weeks later, I'm happy to go back and do some sections, which has probably been my focus. I haven't quite come up with what I would like to do next as my next long run. Let me finish editing all this, give myself a little bit of break, and then see what pops into my head as my next one. What is tickling my fancy, and then that's where I'll go. So, that being said, as you know, I was supposed to go from south to north, and that was scuppered by ACT Parks closing their park for the last 2 weeks of May where I would have been in the park. I would have been right in the middle of the park. They literally had bridged the period I was going to be in there. They had bridged the period I'd be in there, so that sort of destroyed it. And I'd been away for the Easter long weekend, and when I got back I saw that they had closed it, and effectively the next weekend I'm walking, so I had 3 days to do my adjustments. So I mean, the hard thing is I have to do the logistics. I mean, I live in Sydney. I have to basically put all my drops in, 2 of them in Victoria, and then get back to the start, which is now at the north end, to travel all the way down to the south. So my logistics just for moving to get to the trailhead and start the walk were massive, and that took up a lot of my 3 days to get that organised. So my planning to head south was non-existent. I tried to organise my food drops as best I could to go the other way, but look, my food drops were definitely not perfect. I had things in wrong drops that should have been in other drops that I don't know at the time until I get to another drop, and then I go, oh, it doesn't have this and I need it, damn. So my drops weren't perfect, but I then just lived with what was in my drops. But I made mistakes anyway in my drops, be it going north or south. There were mistakes in my drops anyway, so I've got to remember those and make sure I don't make those same mistakes again, cover those off for my next trip. So, but you live and learn. I learned from the last one as well. There were things in the drops that were no good, and I covered those off, and I've discovered some new ones again. So, you know, you refine as you go along. So we'll get better. So I'll show you the gear that I took down. I'll show you my what they call the big 3, which is what I took down, and give you my thoughts on what I had and if it worked or not. So for me, my probably the bit of kit that looked after me and saved me the most during this walk was my quilt. So often I was getting into camp on dusk or after, and then in the mid-May to late May we were then in the negatives quite often, and the negatives would start as soon as the sun had disappeared from wherever you were. So the temperature drop was so fast and you're into the negatives straight away. So you got to the point that you were getting out of your day clothes, which were wet and sweaty because you still sweat even when you're cold and you're moving a lot, getting into your night clothes, and then, you know, basically hunkering down into your tent and trying to get back to temperature, because just getting out of your clothes into your night clothes, you would lose so much body temp, and you were just in a world of freezing at that point in time. So quite often I'd get to camp, I'd set up my tent, set up my bed, and put my quilt all organised in, get my food going, get changed. My food would then be whatever it happened to be, whatever my food was. It was always quick. It didn't take long to get from in my pack to be able to be eaten, so my getting changed would all fit in that sort of time frame. And as soon as that was the case, I basically would then go and sit on my bed with my quilt all the way around me, clipped up, with my puffy on, beanie, whatever that happened to be that would need to be kept warm, but that was the name of the game, just stay warm. So my quilt is an Light and Equipment quilt, and it is a 0 Fahrenheit, which is for us in the rest of the world, it's a -17 degree C quilt. Now the -17 is, you can probably survive in it to -17. That isn't its comfort value. Its comfort value is more like around the -5. And at one night I did get to -7 up at Valentine's Hut, and I was still warm. The only thing that was a little bit cold on my feet, but of course, you know, the bottom of you is never, your extremities are never as warm as, you know, your core. But I was warm everywhere else, and this did keep me warm. It is quite heavy. I mean, it was about 800 grams worth of weight, but I got it knowing I had to have something that was capable of doing minuses like day in, day out, and it did do that. And I lived in this thing at camp. I was in it the whole time, and was very upset to get out of it in the morning. So, as most people are in the morning when it's freezing cold. I have other quilts. I have always been a big hammock camper, so I have hammock quilts. So, you know, I have under quilt for under the hammock, and I have top quilt, and the top quilts are just basic open up quilts, buckles here, cinch up, and that's all it is. And I took one on the human hovel, and I found I was cold because it wasn't obviously to this. It was a 10 Fahrenheit, so a -3 survivable bag, right? So anytime you got down to the -2s, you were freezing cold in it. And when you turned and rolled over on your pad, the quilt would go with you. This one has a zip, which then closed the whole foot box nicely. You didn't have any drafty spots, so that was great. But what was fantastic about it was you then have these two clips here, and there's actually a strap that goes around, and you can connect it over your pad, on your pad, and then you would clip this to it with it, which then meant that your quilt stayed where it was. You could roll around, do all sorts of things inside your quilt, but your quilt would stay there. And with the two top buttons up here, as well as a cinch here, so I had two top buttons up here, it actually stayed quite nicely around your shoulders, and never once did I get a drafty back with it. It stayed where it was supposed to stay, no matter how I was rolling. And of course, you know, I would start on my back, but then I'd have to shift to a side, you know, get a bit uncomfortable, flip to the other side, and it always just stayed in its spot. It was so warm, so warm. So almost my MVP, purely because it just kept me warm where I needed to be warm. On the third last day, the third last day was a wet, rainy day, and at the end of the day, I basically climbed to within 200 meters of vertical elevation of Ball Plateau. So I was up quite high at that point in time, and it was raining, constantly raining. And late in the day, you'd walk through such a thick, dense single trail that was totally soaked that you got totally soaked. The wind was so strong that it was just a freezing cold breeze blowing, so your core couldn't get up. And when I got to camp, I had no heat in my body at all, so I was close to hypothermic at that stage, and I knew I was close to that, so it was a rush for me to put up my tent. And I didn't even put my airbed up at the time. I literally, as soon as my tent was up, I threw my stuff haphazard, and you'll see it in this video. I do a quick video with my phone to show you that I just have stuff just everywhere, not in its usual places, and I'm quite a bit of a stickler for having things to go in certain places in my tent, so I'm a bit OCD that way. But this time I just binned everything in, and I literally got into this as quick as I possibly could, and it did a great job of helping me get my core back up to a safe place where I was able to ward off the hypothermia and be fine, because it was that sort of evening that was the danger. So this thing is just fantastic, So any cold trips now, this will be my thing. When I get a chance to go and do the overland, this will be the one that comes with me, because I know full well this is capable of doing what I require it to do at those low temperatures. So a great bit of kit, expensive, but I would not have been as safe or as comfortable if I didn't have this on this hike. So for sure, probably my MVP. When I think back at it, it probably is my MVP, because I spent so much time in it and it kept me so warm on so many freezing cold nights. It probably is my MVP. So so that's it. My light equipment, as they say, 0 Fahrenheit quilt, fantastic, just brilliant. So that was the quilt. What I took, and this was a very late decision, was a Nemo Tensor mummy pad. So this is the one that's not square, has tapers down the end. So, and it's only as wide as my shoulders, and really is only slightly wider than my feet down at the bottom end. And this is the regular. I had a pad from Alton Gear, which is a Queensland company, and I was really cold on the human hobble with that, and it was only rated to maybe an R4 rating. I'm not sure. I don't even think it's that high, to be fair. I mean, they call it the insulated pad, but I don't even think it was. It might be an R4, but it was cold, and I could feel the cold coming up through the floor, through the pad on the human hobble. So I knew it wasn't capable of doing this. I'd picked up a little while ago after that, and I've used it maybe once or twice, was the Thermarest X-Lite, the super light yellow, and that's a rating of 4.2. But I really don't like the valve. The valve system is just, to me, is a horrendous valve system, and I am a person who doesn't blow their mattress up. I like to use a pump sack. I'm not going to go and buy a little pump, which was quite popular these days, because that was just another gadget I would have to have charged each time to then pump. And then, look, I ran out of charge at some point, so it would have run out of charge at some point, and then I would have been back to just blowing it up with my mouth. So I really like the pump sacks, and the pump sack that came with the Thermarest was okay. But what I like to do, and I must admit, what I have is I have a compression bag pump sack variation from Alton Gear, which I absolutely adore, because I put my quilt inside it and compress it down. It's basically the bag that carries my quilt, and then doubles as the pump sack for my air mattresses. So I bought a collaboration one. So Thermarest had collaborated with a group that makes compression sacks to make a pump sack as well, but its connection was so poor that you couldn't really put any pressure in and it would just pop off. So that was just annoying to me, and I know myself, I'm going to get to camp at some point and I'm going to hate it, because I'm cold, I'm miserable, I'm tired, and I'm irritable. And if this thing keeps popping off and not doing what I want it to do, I would have got crazily ticked off big time. So knowing that in myself, I needed to do something else. So during my research, I had a look and I saw the valve system on the Nemo, and I went, that's really similar to what Alton is using on their pads. So I thought, okay, that's fine if I do that. It comes with a pump bag, and I like the valve because it's a flush valve like what Alton has, which is great. So I went, okay, I'll pick this up, and this is a 5.4 rated pad, so even warmer than the Thermarest and only 30 grams heavier. So I was like, we'll give this a go. And when I got it home and I opened it up and I had a look, I checked the valve and I went, this is a great valve. It's a two-way valve. It goes in air will only go in and it won't come back out, with an extra clip to go over the top just to stop any bleed from happening. But then you can pop the whole thing and it'll just explode all the air, out it comes, happy days. And I thought, this is really cool, I like this valve. And when I was looking at it, I was going, this diameter is crazy similar to what Alton Gear is using for their valve type. And when I got the pump sack out, the pump sack from Alton Gear clipped to this. Tight, but it clipped to this perfectly, which then meant I could then use the bag that I like to keep my quilts in, like a compression sack that I like to keep my quilts in, that also doubles as a pump sack for my Alton pad, would then work for this one as well. And that was a game changer for me. So straight away I then had the system that I like the most with a warmer pad. And this pad, never once, even in the -7, did I feel the cold come up. So this is their mummy pad, what they call their all-season tensor. And like I say, it's rated, it's an R 5.4, and it was warm. I never once felt cold coming through at all. And it's quite comfortable as well. It's narrow, you're not sleeping on a queen. And it's light. So, you know, I'll take a smaller size for a bit less weight and just live with it for however long I have to live with it. But it was comfortable. It was comfortable enough. And like I say, the strap for the quilt would then go around this, clip to it, and the whole system worked really well. So this is a great pad. And now, more likely than not, this will just be my go-to pad. Even if it's a summer, this will be my go-to pad, purely because it's comfortable. That connection to the pump sack works, and it's lighter than my Alton pad, which isn't rated as warm as this. So like I say, the Thermarest is only 30 grams lighter, but I hate the valve system, so it just won't go anywhere. So it'll be a somebody else who wants to go on a trip with me will be their pad, because it's not one that I'll go to. But I really like the valve system on the Nemo. Never once did this go down at all through the night, and every time I put the valve system together for that night, I was still in awe of how this does not bleed air. Because when you're putting it together, you go, this has to leak air, this valve system, but it never once leaked air. And each time I put it together, I was amazed that it wasn't leaking air by the next morning. So it's a great pad, and like I say, it'll be my go-to from now on. I won't go to anything else. It's light enough. Like I say, only 30 grams heavier than, you know, the ultralight pad that literally everybody uses. So I will stick with this one from now on. So I have a small little blow-up ultralight pillow. It's quite tiny, from Cedar Summit, and it packs into something like this size, and that would go with that. And the pillow was fine. I could have it deflated or, you know, soft as I wanted, depending on how I felt that night. So that was good for the adjustment. And it's quite light. It's only 40 grams all up, so pretty good. My tent is the Durston X-Mid Pro 2. This is the Dyneema pad, Dyneema tent, sorry. 2-person, because like you'll see me say in my video somewhere, my luxury item that I take is the second space in my tent. I am a person who likes to have all my gear inside my tent, and that was a thing that sort of really was reinforced to me when I did the Great North Walk. And the Great North Walk was just leech infested. So many leeches that you would find them climbing up the screen of your tent trying to get to you. So for me, I wanted all my gear inside, leech free, not outside where leeches could then, you know, get into wherever and then get to you wherever, any point in time of the day. So I wanted that space inside, and it was really driven into me then at that point that a 2-person tent allowed me to have that space. So I did use a Lanshan what they call their 2-person pro tent, which is like also a single wall like this, more like a Z-Packs duplex style peak roof, doors at either end. And I actually really like that tent, and it comes in at about 900 grams, just a bit over 900 grams. And I actually really like that tent. It went together really well. I'd made some modifications to make it even simpler and easier to use, and I used it on the previous 2 long hikes that I did, and I really liked it. I thought it was great. But knowing I was going to do this one, and I was going to have something heavier like my quilt, I then needed to save grams in other places. So then I went and I thought, oh, I'll get this, because it still just uses a 2 trekking poles as the pole system to hold it up. And I use them, as you know, the trekking poles, I use them all the time. They literally are my second pair of legs when I'm walking. So they're with me, so I might as well utilize them as something else. So I picked this up, and it's about 540 grams by itself. Then the pegs, and the pegs, I ended up using the Cedar Summit pegs, and I adore the Cedar Summit pegs. They were fantastic. They were fantastic. They held in almost everything. So I have a plethora of different pegs. You know, the V-shaped pegs, but to me the V-shaped pegs are always facing the wrong way. They were always like the sharp face of the V-shaped. So here was always being pulled in towards the tent. So to me that was like, it should be the other way. You know, the dirt should be in there, and it should be pulling this way. This should be always trying to spread and spread the load so they don't pull out. And the Cedar Summit pegs that's exactly the scenario they are. They are a Y-shaped peg with the wide part here pointing towards your tent, and then, you know, this point coming out here where they then cut sections out so then you could put your line on, and they held really well. And they worked perfectly. Absolutely brilliant. Everywhere I went, I used them, and I think only in one place did I not use them, and that was pure stone underneath, so they couldn't even get in any depth anyway. So then what I also do then is I actually take the sheep hook, which is basically a pin with a hook on the end. I take those with me as well, because they then are my variation. So if the ground was just in a sort of way that I couldn't use the Cedar Summits, then I would use those. But I only did that on one occasion for the whole trip. One occasion did I not use the Cedar Summits as my base peg. So they worked in almost all occasions. So that was pretty good. And this is, like I say, it's only 560. The ground sheet adds a little bit more, so this might have come out, and the pegs, so this might be altogether as one piece probably about 700 grams all up. So I saved, you know, maybe 300-400 grams on that, which then meant this quilt was about that much more than the previous quilt I used, so I evened out. Now the tent was good, plenty of space, a few things in it that, look, all the design stuff that Dan does is minimalist, and that's perfectly fine. A couple of little design pieces I would change. I don't like the little triangle piece that he's put on the zippers at the bottom, where the door zippers go like this, and he's put this little folded bit of material to sort of hide that connection. I would like that to be on the outside of the tent, not the inside of the tent, because you're using the zippers a lot more from the inside than you are from the outside. So I'd like to see that on the outside, not the inside. It got in the way a lot for me and just annoyed me a little bit. So I'd like to see that changed. For me, the peak vents are dead useless. I've only ever seen peak vents work in a couple of tents, and this is not one of them. I think the peak vents for this tent are on the wrong side. He's got them on the long side near the door with his other X-Mid tents, his 2-wall tents, he has them actually on the narrower face, and I think they're probably better there, but still they're not big enough and they're too steep to actually allow a condensation to go out. So a misted condensation, it's always going to go up and stay up, right? It's not going to drop down and fall out the vent, right? So to me, he could almost just do without them and not put them there. So I don't think they ever did anything at all for when I had them on, and to the point that maybe after the 6th night I never popped them again. I just left them closed because they didn't change what was going on inside the tent. So to me, yeah, just don't have them there. I mean, they'll save you a detail you don't have to use because it doesn't work anyway. So beyond that though, the tent worked flawlessly, did its job flawlessly. Even with a bad pitch, it still did its job. Never once did rain come into the tent. The only wet inside was from me breathing, so and it was fine. So it did its job, so it's good. I actually have another Durston coming. I actually have his X-Dome 2 coming. The X-Dome 2, even though it'll be heavy, it'll be about 1.2 kilo, but I'm interested in that to see how that goes. That can be more, yeah, that can be, I mean, look, that can be used in places where they have pads that you have to go onto. So the overland track, for sure, they want you to camp on pads more, and it's a purely freestanding tent, doesn't need trekking poles. And in fact, if you wanted to, you don't even have to stake it because it is purely freestanding. So I have that coming, and its actual overall size planned footprint is less than this, so it can probably fit in spaces that I had trouble getting this one into, because that was the governing factor for this. Sometimes was it's quite wide and large in its print, so a couple of places I was like, we're really struggling to get this to set, and sometimes it didn't quite fit in where I needed it to, and I just had to work it as best I could. So, but look, beyond that, the DCF material is super light and is purely waterproof, but it's delicate, and you have to really look after your tent. So if you're really rough with your tent, then DCF is not for you. You need to go with a ripstop, more stronger type of material. But if you are gentle on your gear, the DCF should last you a long while. And it was such a light bit of kit and so easy to deal with. Once you got the idea on how it wants to pitch, the pitching was so fast. You can have this pitched in a minute or two, really quick. So and it was good. The footprint was handy. I'm not a big footprint from the manufacturer fan. I usually just have a bit of sill poly that I cut to rough shape, and I use that. But of course, Durston has a weird trapezoidal shape to his floor. His footprints sort of make more sense because it's the same shape as the floor. It's trapezoid, so you can then lay it on the ground and get a better idea of where you're going to be sleeping on the ground before you. So also, one of the mistakes I made was probably my cook kit. My cook kit was not what I should have taken, I guess. My stove was the thing. The rest of the kit was fine. It is just my Tokes pot. You know, that's all it is. Matches, my lighter, my knife, they were all fine. This was the one. I was gram counting at that point in time, and I decided I was going to take my maple fire stove. Problem is with the maple fire stove is this just did not perform in high elevations or wind like today. Like I had a lot of time, it was too high. You can see there the flame was too far, and a lot of times I was having it flaring out even when I was using my pad, which I used for, you know, sitting on whenever I stopped, or as like the welcome mat to my tent, so that's something dry to stand on when I walked out of the tent. I would use this also as a like a windbreak, a windshield, and it still struggled. I mean, I was, like I say, I was gram counting, and I think I say it on one of my videos. It was a mistake I made. I should have not taken this, and I should have gone with just what was heavy, just the stove that would have done a better job. This one here, right, this is my Soto, and you can see if the legs are up, you know, it's a lot closer to the bottom, right, and its throw is much bigger. So I should have just taken this one. It would have been much better, you know, and the pedal on there, so everything just would have been perfect for me. And also, while I was, you know, on the food and whatnot side, my filter, it's just the soya squeeze. It's the large soya squeeze. Last trip on the human hole, I tried the Catadine filter, and I found its flow rate dropped off dramatically on that trip, and there was no way to flush out the gunk that was there. I mean, it was oh, you wash it in the water, that dust doesn't do the job. This is not going to do it, swishing it around in the water. You need water in here, force to blow the gunk off the membranes that are in here, and this actually does it really well. I'm usually a big fan of the micro, which is a smaller version of this, not the mini. The mini I hate. The macro is a smaller version of this, but the same type of thread system. But it also gunks up a bit when debris exists, you know, maybe sediment exists. It gets a bit of a pain. This actually worked really well, and when I flushed it when I got home, I didn't flush it for the whole time I was on the trip. I flushed it when I got home, and there really wasn't that much in it, so the water was actually quite clear. I mean, there was leaves and those sorts of things, but they don't get caught in here anyway. They usually stay in the bag. So I would use this bag, which is you'd hear me talking about it, my dirty water bag. You can see it has connection on the end here, but then this would open up to be a big giant mouth that I could then just scoop water with, and that's what I used all the time for all my filtering. And you'll see my filtering on one of the days. There's a little video there showing me filtering a bottle of water. When you buy the soya, you get a pile of junk with the soya, and to me it's nearly all throwaway stuff, including their water bags, which are horrible. The CNOC bag is so pliable and usable that it's absolutely horrible. But you can now buy a soya with a bag that's the same as CNOC. They've joined forces to create basically the system I have here. They now have that as a system, or in their new packaging, so that's pretty good. But this here is their little what he calls a flush ring, and I actually use it nicely. I like it because I can then have my water bottle, and this is the water bottles I used. These are the water bottles I used, and I just like it for the fact that I can just thread it on, and it's on and it stays there. Because when you're filtering the water, you know, this will be going like this, and you're trying to get it into here, and this bottle might fall over while you do it, and it's just a pile of annoyance that you don't want when you're filtering. So I like the fact that I can just connect it to the base of this and be done with it. What I did do though, and this is something that I have discovered, is if I just have this and screw my bottle on and this on, we create a vacuum. So in the end, you can't get water into the bottle because there's nowhere for the air to escape back out from the bottle. So you're creating basically a compression that you can't replace. So what I've done is I've put this lock ring on, and I've put it on as tight as I can, and then I've gone along, and I don't know if you can see, but I've drilled in just a 2 mil, not even that, it's probably a 1.5 mil hole, and I've done that on both sides, right? It goes through the ring and the plastic casing on this here and here, right? And then when I screw in, it has 2 holes that allow air to escape. So then when I was filtering, air would obviously come out of these 2 holes from the bottle, and I'd filter, and there was no back pressure being involved, and it worked really well. And I basically will, all the systems I tried, this will be the one that I probably stick with. This worked really well, and I have no reason to change. I really like how that all went about. So what I haven't talked about is my pack. I have a big issue with back pain with packs, and I have a plethora of packs in my cupboard to show that I've never found one that has worked and not given me back pain. And to be fair, the one that I used this time is no different. I still got back pain, but I didn't get back pain as early or as extreme as I did on my previous walks. I used the ULA circuit last time. To me, it just packed low and out and squashed the whole pack down. Instead of keeping it its shape, it would squash it down, and that just gave me all sorts of back and shoulder complaints. So I went away from it, and what I ended up doing is I ended up picking up Durston's Kakwa 55. So this is the Kakwa 55, and this is the 2025 model. So the shoulder straps are different. They're not one piece connected here anymore. They're 2 separate straps now, which I like because I had an issue with the one piece rubbing across the back of the neck. This didn't do that. This is his 200X material. You can see the X pattern in there, and in the inside you can see the shininess. That's the membrane on the inside to make the pack waterproof. And this material is bomb-proof. A couple of times I threw the pack, Gill Creek, I just threw it across the creek so I could then jump to the other side. That was fine, no marks. Coming off the back of the Viking, so on the south side of Viking, for me, I'm coming down, there's a couple of, there's the chimney with the rope. I lowered the pack down on a carabiner, but there was a drop before that, and I just threw my pack, and then my pack went bounce, 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 and roll. There is not a scratch, there's not a pulled thread, there's nothing. This pack still looks like it's new. Doesn't smell like it's new. It smells like it's really sweaty and had a sweaty, stinky person attached to it. It did. But otherwise, it's still in mint condition. It is amazing how well this held up. It is super basic. It is literally a roll top, which I love roll top packs, and it is literally just a 1 pack down. But what is great about this pack is it holds its shape. He has put in a frame that goes all the way up to here internally, all the way down to the hip belt. So this just does not want to crush down, right? Vertically, it doesn't want to crush down, which is just unheard of in an ultralight pack. It's fantastic. And I mean, it'll go like this at the bottom, but at the top, it will not close up. My ULA would close up, pull the shoulders together. If you pack that heats, the shoulder would want to spread and pull your shoulder blades back out. This won't do that. So even though I got back pain, like I say, there's not a pack that's not giving me back pain. So it would have been a miracle if this one hadn't. But it didn't give me anywhere near as much back pain, and really, for some of the weights it was carrying, 9 days of food sometimes, it carried it so well. So it's a 55 litre pack. I think it's 40, it's like 45, about 41 litres, maybe a little bit more internally, and then, all the other plethora of pieces they then say. We'll go with a dislike because there's really not really anything I dislike about the pack. Probably the thing that is the biggest for me, really, it's not a dislike, it's just something I think could be a little bit better, is the hip belt pockets. The hip belt pockets they're not the greatest, they're not very large. They look large when you're seeing them like this, but when you fold, when you fold it like this, when it goes around your waist. The actual padding strap bends in and eats into the size and space that you have in your pocket. So you do sort of get restricted on what you could put in there. I loved the pockets on the ULA. They were quite wide horizontally, so this way, they were quite wide this way, so even when you did bend them, they still had plenty of space inside. But that'd be about it. Otherwise, really, there's nothing that I don't like about the pack. The pack is great. This pocket here, to me, when I saw it, I went, what the hell am I going to use that for? Maybe I'll find something, I don't really know, but it was genius. It ends up being, you know, here on the side, and it was just a quick store. I could store my headlamp in there, I could store my beanie in there, and just do it on the go. Take them out at the end of the day on the go. I never had to stop, and that's pretty much what I kept in there the whole time, and it was great. It's sort of internally of this pocket, and this pocket really just held my filter system, and that was all. You know, maybe my trekking poles, if I had to have my trekking poles on here, like for the descent off the Viking, I had my trekking poles in here, but otherwise nothing was really in there apart from my filter. So this pocket became just ingenious in the end. I just used it for everything. The other great part are these elasticized straps here, pockets here on the shoulders. I thought they'd be a little bit flimsy, but they're actually quite a durable stretch material, like quite a thick. It's not lightweight, it's really quite thick, and I think it can take a bit of abrasion and still survive quite well. This one I used for my 700ml water, right? It would then go in here, and it was great. I always had one sitting on the front, and it was usually my electrolyte bottle. It sat on the front, and I could just take it out and drink it whenever I wanted to. For it to work with the bottle, because if the bottle's empty, the bottle will squeeze and just want to, in the end, it will want to pop out. So I added a cinch, bit of shock cord cinch that would then go over the top of the bottle and then keep the bottle in there in place. I added that myself, and then that works really well. And like I say, during the trip, this would have been used for my phone originally, and then snacks by the end of the trip. That's what was in there mainly. On this side here, this pocket is designed, and you can see the base of it here, designed to hold 2 water bottles, and it did hold 2 water bottles quite well. This pack, when you pack it, it holds its shape. It will not pack out away from the frame. It will not pack out. It will only pack up and hold its shape the whole way. Whatever shape is on the bottom, it holds that shape for the whole way. There's no stretch in this material at all. So it packed quite high, and that was something I had to get used to. The pack would be up here, right, and I'd be going underneath something, and it would go bang and hit something behind me, and that was just something I had to get my head in. That was, the pack's as tall as you, Matt, if not taller when it's got lots of stuff in there. But after that, I didn't care, and it was great because it packs against your back. It packs high. It never went out and pulled your center of gravity out away from your back, so it was great for that. It doesn't come with this shock cord. I put this shock cord on, and this is only like 1 mil shock cord, and I put it on here like this system, because I would then use it to, you know, tuck things, or if I had this full, you know, with my raincoat and a few other wet items or whatnot, I would then cinch this over the top and hold whatever might be sticking out. So by the end of day 7, your rubbish bag, humping all your rubbish out, was quite big as well and would be sticking out, for me anyway, so then I could cinch that. I had my towel was always clipped to here, hanging off, and if I was in places where it was a bit rough, I could then pick it up, just tuck it in to these straps, and they would hold it in place. And it was just a little bit of extra added, you know, detail for me to then, you know, just do a little bit more, right? So it worked really well, and this material is crazy. Like I say, I threw this down hills, and there is not a mark on this mesh material. It's not stretchy, but he has it pleated, which then allows it to puff out. It's it's elasticized, and it's actually elastic in here. It's not actually shock cord. It's actually quite a thick elastic in here. So I mean, I guess that'll be like one of the first things to go, but otherwise this pack is absolutely bomb proof. It's fantastic. It's cinch systems to the top. It's just a simple roll, only clips one way, there's no other way, just clips one way, and then a nice V-strap to go over the top, which worked really well when I had my tent on the top and my sit pad. I could have the V-strap come over the top and cinch, and that worked really well for me draping off my solar panel off the back as well. So that was really good, and I really have no complaints with it. It's a great pack. It'll be my go-to pack now. I will use that all the time because it did everything I needed it to do. And it's, like I say, absolutely bomb-proof. It took such a beating, and it didn't bat an eyelid at anything I threw at it. So that was great. So knowing full well that I was going to do a lot of night hiking because I had a set time frame, which meant the distance I was doing meant I was doing long Ks, which meant I was going to spend a lot of time either in the morning or in the evening hiking at night. So I ended up getting a headlamp from Nightcore. I have a Nightcore and I have their UL40 a 25 headlamp, and it's super tiny, super light, only 40 grams, but you only get maybe 1 or 2 hours running time out of it and then it dies, and that was never going to work for me. I needed something that was going to give me endless hours of run time, and this has an ultra setting where it will do I think it might be 1400 looms, which is mind-boggling to me. I ran it more on the lower setting, which is around the 400 and maybe the 600, depending on if it was quite dark and it was a bit messy. I might have bumped it up to go a bit higher, but otherwise I'd run on the minimums all the time. The minimums were plenty. That worked really well. So it's their NU. I don't know if you can see that there, but that's their NU43. Longitudinal battery in here, and I actually quite like this rotating system. It's really nice. If you didn't want the buttons pressed, and this is what I ended up doing, I'd just rotate it and click it in there, and then the buttons are sort of hidden against the plate and they can't be accidentally turned on. It was great. Charging port on the side, with a cover plate like that on the side. This worked fantastic. This was a great bit of kit. It's a bit heavier. It's probably about 120 grams, so monstrously heavier than the other one, but hours and hours and hours of run time. You click the round button on the bottom and it would tell you, right? It would tell you how much you have. So at the moment I have I've got half battery in here, right? Half battery is probably still good for another 3-4 hours of night hiking. So that ate it up. It was fantastic. Great bit of kit, and it's steel case, tempered plastic as well. So this thing just took everything I threw at it, and it was perfectly fine. So it was a great bit of kit. So that worked really well, and I think that was great. Would I use it all the time? If I know I'm going to do lots of night hiking, it's definitely coming with me. If I'm doing work where I know full well I'll be getting to camp and whatnot, I'll probably take the lighter one because I won't need anything heavier. The lighter one will do plenty of, an hour or two in the evening at camp, and that's all I need it to do. Perfectly fine. But hard yakka, I'll take it from now on. So that was really good. So with the power, I then picked up, this is obviously a 20 amp hour battery pack from Nightcore, and I had 2 of these, and these are crazy light compared to the equivalent Anchor ones which I have, which are way out here and maybe another third heavier than this again. USB-C only, dead flat as you can see because I haven't charged them since I got home. carbon casing, rubber corners, so you could, and they're an IPX 48, I think, waterproof, so they actually, you know, take the weather quite well, take a battering as well. The charge they hold and how they divvy it out, I think are okay. I don't think it's world leading. I think one of my older anchors is an absolute beast for charging things, and I don't think these are quite there to that level. But then they weigh, like I say, at least a third less, and they're a third the size. So they did the job. They worked well. Getting charge into them with the solar was fine if I had it behind me and it was a sunny day the whole time. 2 sunny days would fill these up again. But I had trouble getting power into them on the last few days. I had overcast and rain for the last 3 days of my trip, and I just couldn't get power into them, and that was all she wrote. In the end, they couldn't deliver anything to my phone. They could deliver to my watch, which was a lifesaver. They actually got my watch to 90%. So that was it. That was good. That was good enough. I could then navigate with my watch and everything else, and that's what I did. So that was it about gear, just general gear. These are the shoes I took. These are Brook Cascadia 17s. The tread on the bottom after 740k, they're almost flush. There's almost nothing here now on the balls of both of them. It's almost gone. You can see, you can probably see it there, but the heel cups absolutely destroyed. The amount of driving uphill was just crazy, and it just disintegrated the heel cups. Inside there, they're super feet, inner soles, and they've copped an absolute wreck as well. And you can see this was the shoe that was giving me trouble up around the ankle, and I ended up having those laced down. And in fact, these laces actually work in through that part there like this, so they actually go across this way, so you can see that's quite a low lace down. So they worked. I used Cascadias on the human hovel, and they worked really well with my feet. And you know, like, I have arthritis in my feet, and that's a daily struggle for me, but these shoes get on with my feet the best out of any shoe. I've tried others and been in horrendous pain. These seem to give me the least amount of issues, so I'll probably stick with Brooks for most of my hiking life, I would say, from now on. We just throw them away after a long trail because they are absolutely disintegrated. So, and like I say, it's funny, it's the left foot is almost no tread at all. The right foot has a little bit more, but you know, not drastically more, but they really did. You know, you look at that, that's pretty flush. There's there's not much left to them, but they did their job. Worked really well. They get wet through. Obviously, they're not waterproof. They get wet through, but I mean, that's something I know. It's going to happen, and I go in with that in my head that that's going to happen, and I deal with it on the trail. But they did really well, so I was really happy with it. And my day shirt. This is my day shirt. Here it is. It is a icebreaker, and it's a 125 knit. Probably needs another wash because it still has that matte stink smell. But I mean, I don't know if you can see, but it got a lot of holes in it. There's one there, and there's, you know, there's a few on the back. There's some on the sleeves. I'm not going to show you all the holes, but it, you know, it's merino, and it's like a blend. You know, it's a bit stretchy. Look, it did a job, and I really wanted to try a merino top, the equivalent of the polyester one that I wore on the human hovel. They both stunk about the same. In fact, this one was probably more crusty than the polyester by the end of the trip. And the polyester got one hole in it, in the same spot as the front on this one. This one's got maybe 6 holes in it. This one definitely didn't live up. Didn't hold itself up as well as the other one. So I really wanted to try merino. I tried merino in as much gear as I could. I mean, obviously not the hiking pants, but you know, my night clothes were all merino. This shirt was merino. The gloves I wore underneath my hiking gloves or at night were merino. They disintegrated to the point that they were fingerless gloves, and I chucked them out when I got home. There was no saving them. My leggings that I wore at night got a hole in them just on the thigh. I mean, how do they get a hole when literally I just put them on at night time and go to bed in them? So the jury's still out for me on merino. I mean, merino was warm. My night shirt was just beautiful. I love my night shirt, but it was just my night shirt. How would it cope day to day? I don't know. And I just don't think merino at the moment is as hard a wearing as a polyester. Keeping in mind that I have creeper merino toe socks, and these were all these will be all I ever wear on trail. I've worn them now on probably the last 3 years now. These are all I wear on any hike, day hike, long hikes, whatever, and I'll swear by these. I've never had blisters on my toes. I've had blisters in other spots. No sock can stop you from getting blisters. That's just not a thing, no matter what they say in their advertisement. No sock will stop blisters. But this one at least stopped blisters on my toes, in between my toes, and I can deal with the rest of it. I can tape the rest of it. The toes are really hard to deal with if you start getting blisters there. And I've never had blisters on my toes. I've had sore toes, damaged toes from driving into the shoe, but a sock can't stop that either. But beyond that, these are just spectacular. Merino creepers from New Zealand. When you got them on, you don't even realise you got them on. They are the most comfortable toe socks I've ever come across. And I actually have, apart from these long ones, which I use for hiking, I have half cuts, ankles, the whole lot, and I'll wear those all the time. Absolutely adore them. Fantastic socks. Even day to day, I'll wear them. They're great. So the merino, yeah, jury's still out. Will I go back to merino? I may go back to a polyester top for my day shirt just because they're harder wearing. There are a few things like, you know, the merino would stretch and then it stayed stretched for the whole trip, so it was really hard to keep my sleeves up. The polyester doesn't stretch and stay stretched. It keeps wanting to shrink back down. So, and I like wearing the long sleeves, so maybe I'll go back to a polyester. We'll see. We'll see how we go for the next trip, depending on where the next trip is. We may look into it. But if it has to be hard wearing, I'll probably go polyester, because I know that at the moment, the merino stuff I had that was the equivalent didn't do as well as the equivalent polyester in its durability. In its warmth, no problems. In its durability, not so much. So we'll see. But let's see. Probably the best bit of kit, and I must admit, probably the two best bits of kit that I had were from Zorali, right? Zorali. This is their square winter top. I'm not too sure what they call it, but I mean, if you look it up, you'll see it's a square knit recycled materials to make it. And this sucker was so bloody warm, so warm. Kept me entertained. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of this big giant one pocket across the front thing, but you know, besides that, whatever. But it had the it had the thumb hole sleeves, and the arm lengths were perfectly fine for me. There was no extra force in here because they weren't quite long enough. They were quite comfortable. The hood was good. The hood actually has a cinch, so you could actually get this to come up under here, or you could have it up here and just cinch in like this. Do you know what I mean? So it was almost like a built-in buff in it, and it was so warm for what it was. I mean, it is basically 100 grams lighter than the equivalent merino version that I had that I used on previous trails, and it was as warm, if not warmer. It was fantastic. So I'll swear by that jumper. It was great. It was really good, and I really beat the hell out of this. It would do night duties at night in bed. It would do morning duties starting out on the trail. It did it all, and it never bat-nighted. It was fantastic, fantastic. The next bit was, again from the same company, Zerali, was their hiking pants. Now I was a bit and ahhed about these when I saw them, and I thought, no, look, I'm going to have my other hiking pants that I adore and I love from Kathmandu, and I've used them forever and ever. And the zip-offs, these aren't zip-offs. I usually like to have a zip-off, you know. But going colder, I thought, fine, you know what, we're not going to zip them off anyway, Matt. It's going to be too bloody cold. You're never going to do it, so just go with the long one. So we thought we'd give these a shot, and we'll give them a go, right? And the seller for me really was this belt, built-in belt into it, cinched up, and it was a godsend. I lost 8 kilos on this hike, so my waist shrunk so much over that period. I'd put 4 kilos on before I got on the trail, knowing that I'm hopeless at eating and I would lose the weight. I lost 4 on the human hobble. I lost 8 here. So I'd put 4 kilos on. But by the end of the trail, this was puckering like this because I was way out of space. But the pants did really well. They held up really well. The only bit of wear and tear is when I crashed, I put a tiny hole and scuff on the knee, but for how I crashed on a fire trail that was rocky and gritty and how hard I came down, I'm actually surprised it wasn't a big giant gash torn open in the pants. So they'd done really well there. The other one was, there's a hole here in this pocket here. There's a hole here. I had the Chapman's Guide in here. It fit perfectly in this outer pocket, and I could wear it on my leg and take it out whenever I wanted to look at it, right? But it was enough. Obviously, it was put enough weight on to open the seam here, and this is just a single stitch seam. That's probably something they need to look into just for their durability, because that literally is the only mark or defect that happened here. Otherwise, the rest of it is perfect. I mean, these are blackberry proof. I was going through blackberries, and the blackberries not once caught and grabbed these pants. And you know what blackberries are like? They grab everything. Doesn't matter. It's just the smallest things, and they'll hold on to it, and you have trouble getting them to disengage. They never grabbed these pants. They could not grab these pants. They were great. So I really liked them. And then I think, I mean, I'll do a bit of stitching, and I'll repair that little opening that's there just myself, and then I think I'll just use these all the time. I'll just use these all the time. They were great. They dry really well, even when they hold water, rainy days. Like on the third last day, I got smashed with the rain, and the rain came from nowhere to the point that where I was in the situation I was in, it came down and made a mess so quickly that I couldn't even get rain pants on in time to have done anything anyway. So these got absolutely drenched. The next morning, only the waistband was wet, and that's because there's an elastic in there, so that obviously that can't dry. But all this material just dried, and the whole rest of the pants were perfectly fine, and they were dry, and away I went. So, you know, they were great. They ate it up, so fantastic. Most of the gear from Zerali were fantastic. Their gloves, like I say, disintegrated, so I can't say they were fantastic. The leggings got a hole in them. Apart from that small hole, they're actually quite nice leggings. So, you know, I'm a bit meh about how the leggings are, because they should be more durable than that if that's all I'm going to use them for. But the pants and the jumper, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Just, they were bomb-proof. Fantastic, fantastic. So I would definitely buy more pants and more jumpers when those ones run out. They were great. So for my puffy, I actually got a MacPack Uberlight, and this is their V2. I have the V1 Uberlight, which I wear. That is my hiking. puffy. It does all my hiking with me wherever I go. But I wanted one that was a little bit bigger, because the one I've got is a small, and it's actually quite small, tight fit, very minimalist and super light, right? I basically went up to a medium because I just wanted something that had a little bit more length, in the arms, just a little bit more length everywhere, a bit more out where I could then have more layers underneath and it would then still fit. So this is just the medium version. It's the V2, which means it now packs into its own little pocket inside. The previous one had a separate pouch that a stuff sack you had to put it in. This now has one inside, which then also doubles as a pillow, but I wore this every night, so there's no way this was going to be a pillow. But anyway, it still packs into itself, which is good. But it's still the Uberlight, so it's quite minimalist in its down and its materials, and it is still crazily light, super light, but it did the job. And it was actually good to have that little bit extra length when I was, when it's really cold. It's just nice to have the extra length. You can pull it down, it gets down a bit past your waist, a bit down, down your leg a bit more. So, whereas my other one literally is to the waist, and that's as far as it would have gone. So it was just nice to have just the extra bit of length. I don't need the medium. A medium's a bit big for me. The small is perfect in size generally, but the medium was good just for the coolness that I had on the trail. And I kept everything in here. My phone was always in here. My water filter, which is a membrane filter, can't go to 0 because then obviously the membranes can split and then it's not filtering anything for you, so there's no point using it. So I made sure I always had that in here. No matter what night it was always in, because I didn't know if it would go to 0 or not. So I always slept with my filter zipped in a pocket, and that's what we did, and it was great. It did really well. So yeah, I was happy with it. So I must admit, I don't really have any massive fails. There was no product where I got there and I said, oh, look, apart from the stove, and that was my mistake. There's nothing wrong with the stove. The stove is actually really good and great for my normal bushwalking that I do at obviously a lot lower elevations and in warmer, right? Perfectly fine. So that was my mistake for not taking the correct stove for the situations I was in. So that was a fail on my part, not on the stove itself. So I didn't really have anything that was a massive fail. Like I say, apart from some merino products that have given up. Look, the gloves kept me warm for the whole of the way. Even when they got to be fingerless, they were still keeping my hands warm. So they didn't fail me in that respect. They just failed in their longevity. I couldn't use them for another trail. They just had to go in the bin, so I would have to get another pair, right? So that would have been as far as I got as to fails. And everything otherwise did their job, which is to keep me, going to the end, alive by the end of the trail, right? That's what they're there for. I mean, look, weather is our biggest danger on trail. All right, weather is our biggest danger on trail. So everything that could handle the weather and allowed me to stay alive in the weather did its job, right? So usually I use, in that respect with weather, usually I use ultralight rain pants sometimes, and I have an ultralight raincoat which weighs crazy nothing, right? And but it has nothing. It literally has nothing. It doesn't have pockets, has just a hood. Otherwise it has nothing, right? Zero. But I knew again I'm going to a place that the weather is more extreme and I need more extreme gear. So I ended up getting rain pants and a rain jacket, and they are all outdoor research, right? And it's their it is their, what do they call this one? Their foray rain set, effectively. I got them at separate times because I originally wasn't going to have the pants, but I ended up getting the pants late in the day. And the pants went really well. I actually ended up really liking the pants. what's a bit of magic is they have this full-length wet zipper, so I could zip them down from the top, I could zip them up from the bottom, depending on what I wanted to do. But if I could zip them down from the top, I would then get air coming in through the side, so I wouldn't be full sweating. Inside, I could sort of draft, you know, get a little bit of air in draft, I vent out effectively, which was good, and they worked really well. I mean, I even slept in these, as well as the rain jacket on freezing cold nights, but their wind resistance is amazing. There's a lot of times where I was walking across crazy open areas and the mist and the rain was, and the wind was just so full on, and these just beat it all away, and ate it up. And and I must admit, on the last 2 days, I just wore rain pants. I did not even wear my day-to-day pants. They went in the pack, and I just wore the rain pants for 2 days, and they were comfortable just as the base layer. They were even comfortable as the base layer, so they worked really well. So I won't take them all the time because obviously more extreme weather will require them. Less extreme weather, they're too heavy for the amount of time you probably won't even use them. So they're more of an extreme weather bit of kit that I have. So, but I will happily use them in extreme weather when I need to. They didn't fail me. They were really good. The jacket was the same. The jacket's the same. As you'll know from my videos, probably my most hated gear is a raincoat. I hate having a raincoat because it's so hard to control your body's temperature inside it. So you can sweat inside and just be just as wet inside as you are outside, purely because you're overheating. So it's really hard to control your body's temperature inside a raincoat. So I hate having to deal with that scenario. So it's my most hated bit of gear is a raincoat, putting it on, right? And I still hate raincoats, just in general. But this one did so well. Like I say, same with the rain pants. I slept in them. I used them for the crazy winds and rain and mist in exposed areas and all that sort of stuff, and it did its job so well. And this one was a lot easier to control because it has, and I don't think you probably can't see it, you won't be able to see it, but anyway, there is a zipper that starts right up here. So there's the pits, there's a zipper that starts here, and it actually goes all the way down to, it's black, which is no good, all the way to the bottom, right? So I can either zip that all the way up, I can zip that all the way down, or adjustments wherever. So quite often, and it is actually still open now, I can put my hand in there now, I actually would leave the pits zipped open the whole time. Even when it was crazy windy and wet, I'd leave the pits open all the time, and that allows air to vent out, you know, so there's no, the build-up was less, you sweated less inside, you know, the usual control with the zipper on the front, with the pits, and sometimes, in fact, I would actually zip it all the way down, so it was a big, giant, long zip down like this, and I could feel the breeze going in. It would still keep me warm on the chest, but I could feel the breeze going in on the sides, which was doing then what I wanted to do, which was sort of trying to moderate my temperature inside the jacket so I didn't sweat so much. So it worked really well. It's obviously made of that horrendous PFC Gore-Tex, which we all should really stay away from, but beyond that, it actually is a good raincoat. I mean, if it wasn't Gore-Tex, then even better, but you know, we're only just coming across that now, aren't we, as how dangerous Gore-Tex actually is. And what do? I'll use it until, you know, I can get something better. But it worked well. Extreme, again, in extreme only is when I'll take this. Otherwise, I'll go back to my other ultralight jacket for all my other work. But if I'm going to somewhere extreme and I know I need something that's more hearty and can combat the conditions better, I'll just pull this out straight away. It worked perfectly. And like I say, the venting is the thing, right? For rain jackets, venting is the best option at the moment. All this, we can let vapor out and not water droplets in is one of the best myths on the planet. The moment your rain jacket is soaked with water, how can vapor vent out? All the water is now blocking all the holes that the vapor could come out from. So the vapor stays inside, turns to water droplets, gets wicked into your clothes, and you start getting cold from it. And that's just how it will work. That's the science, right? So to have vents, if you can, to let that vapor out is probably the best way. So with that jacket, that worked great, perfectly fine. So like I say, I have no qualms with it. It worked really well. It did a great job, and I wore it way more than I thought I would wear it. Both of them way more than I thought I would. Sometimes there were days where I just had that on. I just had my day shirt and my raincoat and my rain pants on, and that's all I would have. And there was days, sometimes there were a day, back-to-back days, where that's what I had on, and that's just what it was. So it worked. Even though I hate them, they worked, and I can't fault them in that respect. So that was some of the bigger stuff. I mean, obviously there was other things that I brought, but that was the bigger stuff, and probably the stuff that affected day-to-day more than anything else. Like I say, everything worked well. My quilt was I think it was my MVP. It kept me so warm. Did the job so well. My backpack, I can't fault it. Like I say, I beat the hell out of it. It copped an absolute pasting, and you can't even see a dirt mark on it. It still looks like Dan just sent it to me, and I've pulled it out of its plastic bag ready to go on its first hike. So I mean, what can you say? It's almost done 1,000 kilometers and it still looks brand new. So I mean, you can't fault that, can you? You know, the headlamp worked well. I like my filter system. I don't think I will now change. You know, I've had a play over the last few years as to different filter systems with different, you know, operations. But in the end, the matte stupid proof one is the one for me. You know, dirty water bag scoop, put the filter on, screw the bottle to the bottom of the filter so it can't fall off, or, you know, whatever with my, you know, really poor filtering form at the end of the day. It all defies all that and makes it simple for me. So I'll probably just stick with that system now. It really did well. And since I ever got a CNOC bag with the opening in it, I've always used it. Even with the Catadyne, I even bought the bag that's suited to Catadyne and worked them in conjunction, and I won't go away from that bag. That bag is great because it gives me the allowance that I can carry. It can hold 2 liters of dirty water, and I can put that in my pack and take it with me. It just gives you that versatility. So I won't change from my filter system. It worked really well. My tent, like I say, on long hikes, it'll probably still be this tent. I have the X-Dome 2 coming purely more out of interest, because I really like Dan's tents, so I'm more out of the interest of what his freestanding tent is like. And, you know, I have a daughter who likes hiking, so, and I think at some point we're thinking of heading off to do something like the Overland, and then that will mean that we can then take this one tent that'll fit both of us, and it's freestanding. Like I say, there'll be pads that you have to pitch on, especially on the Overland, and it will do that. Trekking pole tents don't work on those sorts of things very well, if at all. So this will do it. And also, if I'm doing a warmer hike and all my gear is lighter, like my quilt will be 500 grams lighter easily with my summer quilt, and all then summer night clothes, summer day clothes, everything just becomes so much lighter. I can take the heavier tent that will give me the more space, the more room, and I'm not too worried about its extra weight because I've reduced the weight everywhere else. So I'll have that option. And I'm just intrigued by his freestanding tents. I'm not a giant freestanding tent fan. I do like the trekking pole ones, but the freestanding one will give me a bit more space on the inside. I'm intrigued to see how I enjoy that more with the extra weight I have to carry. So it will probably be the one I take on my next hike, purely because I'll want to try it out on something like that to see how my functions are different to when I'm with a trekking pole tent. So it's coming, shipping at the end of this month, I believe. I was away when he released it on the AAWT, so I didn't get a chance to order it and get it sent, so it wasn't here when I arrived, but I ordered it when I got home. So it'll arrive in June. I will then probably go and do an overnighter here and there and have a bit of play with it to see how it functions and how it holds up. So that's it. Just on a side note, this is the Enduro battery. I mean, if you get a GoPro battery, they're blue where the white is. That's just the normal battery. This is the Enduro battery. This is the one that's supposed to hold up and handle lower temperatures and last longer. But I mean, I'm sure they do compared to a normal GoPro battery, but these really disappointed me on this hike. And in fact, the GoPro out of all the objects I have, probably was the thing that disappointed me the most on this hike. I think my GoPro 10's coming towards the end of its life. You'll find with this edit, even though I'm talking in this big long run, there'll be edit gaps, and that's because the GoPro is just overheating constantly. And it's like, why are you overheating? So anyway, it is. But these batteries, like I say, I struggled to keep these operating the camera in cooler temperatures, to the point that a lot of the time I had to film the outs in the during the next morning when the GoPro had warmed up a bit and the batteries were warmer. So, you know, life on the trail, huh? Not everything's easy. Not everything's simple. And filming was actually quite tough this time because of the extreme temperatures that we had at the lower end. Filming was actually quite tough to put days together, but almost got there. The last 2 days obviously aren't crash hot, and we'll tack this onto the end to the very last video. But beyond that, I think every day got a video out of it, which hopefully, I mean, if you're watching this, then obviously you enjoyed them enough to have got this far, so well done. So that'll be it. That's the end. I mean, oh, Matt can ramble when he's talking to a camera, can't he? Crazy. So that'll be the end of it for another year, everybody. Not guaranteeing there won't be something else. There might be. Maybe I will bugger off and do a couple of overnighters, or 3-day hikes here or there. I don't know. I have none planned, but it doesn't mean I won't do one. But that's the end of a long trail for the year. I'll plan to do one next year, hopefully, see how we go. Work dependent, obviously. Work always seems to get busy when I've decided to plan something, and makes it really hard on everybody if I bugger off a long time. So we will see. We will see. But it won't be the end. There will be some long trail hiking at some point on the channel. I'll put stuff there. And we'll see. So hope you enjoyed the series on the Australian Alpine walking track. I know some of them are crazy long. Sorry. I don't go out to make them really long, but I sit there watching the video and go, I like this part of the trail, so I leave it in. So if they're a bit long, sorry about that. And then you had to, I mean, just fast forward. You'll be right. You'll be right. Just skip through. No worries. But I hope you enjoyed them. I try to give, a fairly realistic take on the trail and the day. Look, it's not all sunshine and roses, is it? Sometimes it's just mud and cold. So I try to depict that as best I can in my videos as to what's really going on, you know, to give you a real idea of, is it for me or not? Because I had those answers, I had those questions myself before I did this. You know, seeing the Viking was like, can I do the Viking? In the end, the Viking wasn't an issue. Probably crosscut saw was probably the day I didn't like the most, because my heights phobia just did not like being so close to edges as the crosscut saw forced you to be. So, you know, in other people's videos, I don't think I came across anything on the cross that showed the crosscut saw was that way inclined for me. So hopefully what I showed sort of depicts enough that you get a feeling of what the trailer's like, and then is it for you? So that's not all smiles, all right? People who smile all the way through the trail are just spinning you a big lie, I reckon. I didn't smile the whole way. Smiled some of it, but not the whole way. So, you know, if I didn't like it, I'll tell you I don't like it. If I like it, I'll tell you I like it. So that's just how it is. So hopefully that sort of way gives you a good idea. So anyway, that's it. Matt's last ramble for the year. Thank you for sticking around, watching these videos, which, you know, I compile for fun. And enjoy your hiking. And I'll see you again in the next one. Alright, you take it easy, everybody. Enjoy your hike.